In terms of modern literature, the number of books which are of those published in any given year which become collectible it represents a tiny percentage. The criteria involved, they have to be by collectible authors, they have to be first editions, and they have to be first impressions of those first editions. And beyond that even, they may even have to be first issues or first states of those impressions. Which begs the question, of course, how does one determine what is a first edition, first impression, first issue? It's not a new problem. This book here, by Michael Budell, was published in 1928 and styles itself, "The collector of modern firsts buys his books nowadays immediately on publication wherever possible," and then goes on to say that for older books we need to know what are first editions. He then canvassed all the publishers he could write to ask how they determine or signify first editions within their books, and got a wide variety of responses, from plain rude to obfuscation, and some quite helpful. I thought it perhaps worthwhile just to go through some basics in terms of English and American first editions and how one tells them apart. As a general rule, it's fair to say that in English publications they will tell you when they are not first editions, and in American publications they will generally tell you somewhere in the book that they are first editions. And I have a couple of examples. So if we take Right and Wrong, published in 1938, the first edition bears that on the back of the title page. It says first published 1938. The second impression, which is here, this copy has its second impression dust jacket, tells you straightforwardly, reprinted September 1938. And that will be absolutely standard for the vast majority of English publications. This book, if it were a first impression, even in this sort of condition, would be worth tens of thousands of pounds. But because it's a second impression, it's not worth £1,000. Now, if you take an American publication, classically Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls, and it's interesting to note it was just after the Buddha book was published that scriveners who published this book started to employ the use of a capital A on the back of the title page to designate that it was a first printing. And so this book here has got exactly the same title page as the first edition, 1940, the first printing of the first edition, but on the back of the title page there is no letter A. We have it because it's inscribed by Gellhorn and Hemingway. This is just a standard copy of the first edition, first printing of the first edition, and it has, on the back of the title page, again, see it's dated 1940, just there, the letter A. And that's, it's unique to scriveners, but generally speaking there will be something in the book to tell you it's a first edition if it's America. The designations vary between publishers. There are publishers like Hutchinson in the 20s and 30s who wouldn't even date their books, thus keeping the longevity of any given new book, giving greater longevity because you could keep selling it in the notion that it had only just been published. A later innovation actually started in the mid-60s, I think, and persists and is now the most commonly used designation of printing and impression, and it's the number line, and collectors will be familiar with this. Absolute model for this kind of type of delineation are the Harry Potter books, mostly because they were reprinted very quickly because they sold so well. The first, second and third impressions of most of the books look very, very similar. Azkaban is a perfect example of that. But how to tell with this is this number line just here, where it says 10 and it goes down to 1. The lowest number in the number line represents the impression or printing that you're handling. So this has the 1 and therefore is right. There are very, very few exceptions to that. I think Random House in America used to use a number line down to 2, above which they had the word first edition, first American edition, and they would knock that legend out and leave the 2. But it's very unusual. Essentially what you're looking for is the 1. This particular book, which is The Prisoner of Azkaban, which is the third Harry Potter title, has what we call an issue point. And that issue point is within the printing, the first printing. So you get first edition, first impression, but there are two different setouts of the back of the title page. This one is the earlier one, and it contains the copyright given to Joanne Rowling. She objected. They changed it to J.K. Rowling, and so you have the early state Joanne, the second state, the issue indeed, which is J.K. Joanne is the collectible one. It's in keeping with all that we've been talking about modern first editions, which is the earlier the better, almost to the exclusion of everything else. There are many other kind of variant ways in which publishers will tell you what printing they are, from the ones I've mentioned. I mean, actually, there's almost as many as there are publishers. Harcourt Brace in America use this bizarre kind of letter codes, almost like a hallmark. Appleton have a number 1 at the end of the text. But as a rule, look for the date on the title page being the right date of publication for the book, and the internet is full of examples of when details of when books were published. And look for anything on the book itself which implies, for instance, adverts at the end of the book, if it's not dated, which advertise later books, or reviews, newspaper reviews of the book you're holding. All those are signs that you have later printings. Dust jackets, which have reviews of the book, definitionally must be later, with tiny exceptions like pre-publication puffs that were obtained. For instance, John le Carre's first book has a review by J.P. Priestley, I think, on it. Well, that was from an advanced copy. But generally speaking, that's what to look for. Look for something that tells you it's later, and then by a process of deduction, if you've got nothing, you're likely to have a first edition. In closing, I just wanted to say that we were talking about Scribners earlier, and how they put the little A on the back of the title page in an effort to be accurate and precise. And it does represent an example of how one gets anomalies in these things. This is the play, the 5th column. It was originally published, just months before this particular printing, in a larger book called 5th Column and Other Stories by Hemingway. But they pulled the play out and printed it separately, and just an edition of 1,000, 1,500 copies or something. Scribners, being in an attempt to be accurate, decided that they had reprinted this book before, and so title page has but no A. However, it really is the first printing, so the only printing of this play, and as such is worth £1,000. Well, it's not happened to me, but I do know people have bought this book as a reprint. And I think it's an example, and it goes to show that all that I've been saying is under the caveat that much of it can be ignored, at least at times. But I hope it's some sort of loose guide and will set you in the right way of thinking about how to identify first editions and the first printings of those first editions, at least in general. And the rest of it, internet research and ask booksellers like us, I guess.